This is part 3 video on my sincere advice to Punjabis and Sikhs in India, as well as those in North America and Britain from a very heavy and grief-stricken heart, and discusses bad news for Punjabi and Sikh murderers who have murdered Sikhs or whites of non-German ancestry in the United States and British Commonwealth or Britcom nations. It provides detailed information on what all the United States has done for the Sikhs and Punjabis and the specific judgments God has provided in dealing with murderers and enemies of the Punjabis and Sikhs. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide a unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. I started this series of videos on advice to Punjabis and Sikhs because I recently learned that they have been convinced by German masqueraders, who are people of German ancestry living in white countries in the United States and Britcom nations, to assassinate me if they are asked to go back to India. Two Sikhs, both Pathans masquerading as Punjabi Sikhs, Manjeet Singh Sembi, a friend from Bishop Carton School, Shimla, and Ripdaman Singh Malik, a Canadian businessman, were drafted and agreed to assassinate me. They both were put to death before they could begin to carry out the deed. Other college colleagues were also recruited for the purpose when we were planning a get together. Once I learnt of the plot, I cancelled my participation. In part 1 of this series of videos, I discussed why I gave the decision that all non-whites in the United States and Britcom nations should be asked to go back to their countries of origin, because it was not the intention of these nations to allow mass immigration of non-whites, but was a German masquerader conspiracy to allow such immigration to mix the races and have allies with whom they seek to exterminate whites of non-German or Israelite ancestry. I also provide biblical reasons why God has commissioned me to make such decisions for our nations. I also explained that there was no special relationship between Punjabis and Sikhs and whites of non-German ancestry until about 20 years ago, when they discovered that Germans and German masqueraders were engaged in destroying them because they fought the Germans in both world wars as part of the British Indian armies. If the USA does not protect us, we Punjabis and Sikhs are almost 100% certain to be destroyed completely. However, the Punjabi and Sikh relationship with the United States and Britcom nations is complicated by the fact that many of them were allowed in as immigrants because they murdered persons of British descent, or so they thought, or other Sikhs in India, and as murderers must be brought to justice according to God's law and man's laws. Then I gave some facts about the Jewish and Israelite uh, uh, background of Punjabis and Sikhs, but mixed with the local population over the past 2,500 years through marriages. Now, Israelite ancestry means the same people as Americans, British, French, Swiss, Irish, Scandinavians, and those of Benelux countries, but again mixed with local populations. Rajputs and Pathans are not of the same racial background, and those of them masquerading as Punjabi Hindus and Sikhs pose a deadly danger to us. In part 2 video, I explained why I need to stay in the United States, because God's commission to me to preach his warning message to the world cannot be done from any other country except the United States or Britcom nations. If I was sent back to India, the government would simply put me in jail for life and then have me put to death. No central or state government in India would allow me to preach God's message freely. The USA also wants me here because of the massive contributions I have made in preserving many lives through prayers to God for protection for whites of Israelite ancestry, when German masqueraders have sent out an order to murder prominent persons by poisoning their food in restaurants and murder their non-masquerader spouses and their mutual children. I have provided understanding of economic development which revived the US economy in the 1990s. The USA want me to stay here to continue making such contributions. In addition, non-German side in America is keeping hundreds of billions of dollars in investments on my behalf. They want me to stay here to manage those investments from headquarters in the United States, as it generates tens of thousands of high-paying jobs in the United States. In part 2 video, I also explained that 80 to 90% of problems in our countries are caused due to racial and ethnic tensions, meaning all non-white people and whites of German ancestry. It was also never God's intention to mix the races. It had led to the earth being saturated with violence and bloodshed before Noah's flood. After the flood, God had to force the nations to separate by confusing the language of mankind and giving different languages to different races. These race related problems would be eliminated if non white people are asked to go back to their countries of origin and German masqueraders no longer lived in United States and Britcom nations. Then I related the good news for those who murdered a white person of British ancestry in their own countries, such as India and former British colonies. We have discovered that those murdered were German masqueraders and not really people of genuine British descent. In addition, to dodge the draft during the Vietnam War, those Americans who ended up in former British colonies because they were English speaking were also German masqueraders. The number of such people murdered in India is less than 50,000. Therefore, they will not be executed for those murders, but those who murdered Sikhs will be brought to justice for that crime. In today's message, I first want to elaborate on what all the United States has done for us Sikhs and Punjabis to protect us so that we can fully appreciate them and respect their decisions affecting our lives. Their goal is that we survive as a people because of the formidable alliance the Germans have put together to destroy us. I had earlier explained that Punjabis and Sikhs' special relationship with the United States and Canada started about 20 years ago after they discovered that the Germans were engaged in trying to utterly destroy us because we fought against them in both world wars as part of the British and Indian armies. I have discovered that the relationship actually goes back even further to before 1984. In 1984, a plan was hatched by India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi with a cabal of youth leaders around her to murder more than 100,000 Sikhs in Delhi. My information a few years ago was that her Sikh bodyguards got wind of her plans and assassinated her before the plot could be carried out. But I have now learnt the truth about how Indira Gandhi's bodyguards got wind of her plans. The US, through its espionage activities, learned of Indira Gandhi's plans to kill many Sikhs to teach them a lesson to never again oppose her, as some of them had carried out demonstrations against her when she declared an emergency in 1975. The US warned her bodyguards about the plan, who then carried out the assassination. After Indira Gandhi was assassinated, the plan to murder Sikhs was carried out anyway, and about 30,000 Sikhs were murdered all over India. No one has been brought to justice for that crime, but our intention and determination is to do so. If Indira Gandhi had not been assassinated, besides the murder of more than 100,000 Sikhs, more massacres of Sikhs or wanton individual killings or in small groups would have been carried out clandestinely by Indira Gandhi and the cabal of young politicians around her. Then, of course, the discovery of Sikhs and Punjabis being targeted by Germans for destruction was discovered about 20 years ago by the United States. In addition, it was discovered that the rest of India was engaged in discriminating against them and impoverishing them. Canada, Britain, and the USA then took further action. To prevent the Sikhs and Punjabis from being impoverished, they allowed Punjabis, but particularly Sikhs, to immigrate to Canada and Britain in large numbers so that they could earn a decent living. And also their kids could get a good education, learn to speak and write good English such that they would be easily employable in the information technology and call center industries, and earn a decent living when they go back to Punjab. Even the United States has helped Sikhs find suitable jobs, such as in the trucking industry and at places like FedEx. The goal was always for our people and all non white people over the past more than 20 years to go back to India and their countries of origin. Punjabis and Sikhs should not despise the favor American and British Commonwealth nations have done for you and despise their decisions. Remember, America and British Commonwealth nations have done us this good because they took pity on us to protect us because the Germans and German masqueraders and their global allies want to destroy us. They will continue to protect us in the future so that we can survive as a people. We should have the decency to respect the wishes of the United States and Britcom nations. The USA has further demonstrated that they intend to protect the Punjabis and Sikhs. Narendra Modi, in a conspiracy with China, planned to send all Sikh soldiers and officers to Doklam in 2017 to have them killed by the Chinese army. However, that plan was shelved when they were warned that the United States, Britain, and Canada can kill all Indians in our countries who are allied with the Germans and Chinese. However, Indians have continued to plot the destruction of all Sikh soldiers by dispersing them throughout the Indian military units so that it would be easy to kill them as their numbers in each of the units would be small. They also plan to assassinate prominent Punjabi business leaders and those that were CEOs of Indian corporations. A message needed to be sent to Modi and other Indian leaders. That message was sent by the United States by killing Chief of Defense Staff General Bipin Rawat, his wife, and 12 others by bringing down his helicopter. The message was that the US will not hesitate to kill India's top political, business, and military leaders if they murdered any Punjabi leaders, businessmen, or soldiers. I think that message has had its effect. Punjabis realistically analyze the situation. You're going to need everyone's help just to survive because the Germans have turned all the people surrounding us into our enemies. That includes much of the rest of India, China, Pashtuns in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and Iran. After going back to India, you're going to have to build your industrial capacity within a few years. I've already given that plan to the Punjab government and I'm willing to make hundreds of billions of dollars in investment and also channel billions of dollars in investment from other sources. You need me alive and not dead to help accomplish that. And I may have to live perhaps half of the year in Punjab and the rest in the United States to help achieve that so that we can just survive as a people. You also need God's help to do that. I will be constantly praying for that help as I do now every day. Another reason we need to be grateful to the United States is that due to their information and intelligence gathering capabilities, they were able to discover the German conspiracy to destroy us. They were also able to discover who their alliance partners are in India and nearby nations so that we could recognize who our deadly enemies are. We would not have known all that without the USA informing us. Our enemies would have continued to clandestinely keep killing us, impoverishing us, and robbing us blind, just like the Rajputs, Pathans, Baniyas, and others have been doing. The USA will continue to help us with such useful information on an ongoing basis, which is absolutely critical for our survival. I hope all Punjabis and Sikhs realize that the USA and Canada have done what the USA and Canada have done for you and will continue to do so. You need to feel deeply grateful for that and truly respect their wishes. Now, there is another very important reason why we need to become self sufficient very quickly. Prophecy shows that the United States, Britcom nations, and Israel will be defeated by a German led alliance and enslaved. Punjabis and Sikhs have a much greater chance of survival in the coming global catastrophic events if they return to Punjab and Punjab becomes self sufficient quickly. That's why we need to stop fighting among ourselves and get down to developing the industrial base to be able to defend ourselves. I also want to bring to your attention the fact that God has acknowledged us as Israelites. As I mentioned in my earlier messages, the office God has given me is stated in Deuteronomy 18 verses 18 to 19, which state, I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto you, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass, that whosoever will not hearken or listen to my words which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. God said that he would raise up a prophet like Moses from among his brethren, meaning among Israelites. Since I am a Punjabi and a Jew who are also Israelites, that means God has acknowledged Punjabis as Israelites. Since I occupy the office of a prophet to Israelites, that means I am also a prophet to the Punjabis. The other role God has assigned to me is that of a watchman, as stated in Ezekiel 3 verse 17. Son of man, I have made you a watchman to the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word at my mouth and give them warning from me. A watchman's job is to scan the horizon and warn the nation of any approaching danger. That is the role I fulfill for America, Britcom nations, and Israel. Since God has acknowledged Punjabis as Israelites, that means I am required to be a watchman for the Punjabis and warn them of any dangers. That is the reason I do many videos concerning Sikhs and Punjabis and will continue to do so. The other nations of the House of Israel are France, Ireland, Switzerland, Benelux, and Scandinavian countries. My warnings also apply to them, though along with Punjabis, prophecy does not indicate any slavery for them. Punishment of defeat in war and slavery will apply only to the United States and Bitcom nations because they are holders of the birthright promise, which means greater material blessings, and also Israel or the Jews because they hold the scepter promise, meaning the promise of kingship or rulership being fulfilled in the British royalty. Now, because of the atrocities German masqueraders have committed in the United States and Britcom nations, and their Indian allies have committed against the Sikhs, and what they are planning to do to us if they win the coming civil war in the United States, we also have to give thought to how we need to deal with them. God has given us quite clear judgments and guidelines in the Bible on how they should be dealt with. That's what I would like to discuss next. These are the guidelines God has given us on how we are to judge people within our nations, as well as people we come in contact with. The first judgment God has given us is in Ezekiel 9 verses 5 to 7, which state, And to the others, meaning other angels, he, that is an angel, said in my hearing, Go after him through the city. Here the city of Jerusalem is used to represent America and Britcom nations because it was the capital of the ancient Israel Empire. And smite, let not your eyes spare, neither have pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids, meaning unmarried young women, and little children and women. But come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary, which is a symbol for God's church. Then they began at the ancient men. These are the top leaders in God's church who are now all elderly, which were before the house, that's God's house, also another symbol for God's church. And he said unto them, Defile the house and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. In this judgment, God is very specific about destroying man, woman, young unmarried women, and children among those who are to be utterly destroyed in our nations for their crimes. This judgment applies to those who have committed atrocities in our midst as well. The danger in application of this judgment is that when killing enemies, Israelites have a tendency to spare women and children. There is also the danger of sparing young unmarried women. Many nations leaders such as in Africa, India, and other nations would like to take unmarried young beautiful white girls from America and Britcom nations into their countries and marry them. But God is very specific to state that even unmarried young women are not to be spared. No one is to be spared. The reason for God's judgment is not hard to find. We now know that German masqueraders are Satan worshippers. Satan and the demons communicate with them, and they have been taught to pay heed to these communications and act on them. Prime example is that to Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who carried out the Columbine High School massacre in Littleton, Colorado on April 20, 1919. The young women will turn their children into children of the devil, teaching them satanic German philosophies. We have seen it in millions of cases in USA and Britcom nations. Now, God is very clear what should be done to those who worship and communicate with demons in our lands. His judgments on such people are stated in the law of Moses. Leviticus 20 verse 6 states, "And the soul that turns after such as have familiar spirits," which means demons, and after wizards, those who deal with such people, and all Germans and German masqueraders do, to go a whoring after them. I will even set my face against that soul, and will cut him off from among his people. Leviticus 20:27 states, "A man also or woman that has a familiar spirit or that is a wizard shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them." Then Deuteronomy 18 verses 10 to 12 state, "There shall not be found among you anyone that makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire. This is cremating him or her alive in sacrifice to gods. Or that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an engineer, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do such things are an abomination unto the Lord." These judgments tell us that all those who dealt with demons are to be put to death. All those who pay heed to such people are to be cut off from among God's people, meaning Israelites. There are some among German and German masqueraders top leaders, such as the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier and German masquerader Charlie Munger, among many others, with whom Satan communicates directly, to whom then all German and German masqueraders pay heed. Leviticus 20:27 is talking about killing those top leaders in our lands, but in prophecy in Ezekiel 9:5-7 leaves no doubt that God means all those who have committed atrocities, which all German masqueraders have participated in, or to be utterly destroyed. For emphasis, the prophecy specifically states that even young unmarried women are not to be spared. There is no ambiguity here on what God means. The word maids, which means young unmarried women, is mentioned in addition to women and children. Now, those who are to carry out this judgment must take the example of King Saul of ancient Israel into consideration when God gave him a command to utterly destroy the Amalekites. The whole incident is described in 1 Samuel 11 verses 15, chapter 15 verses 2-3, 9-11, and 26. "Thus says the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him on the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not. Slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass." But Saul and the people spared Agag and the rest of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fatlings and of the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuse they utterly destroyed. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, "It repents me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he is turned back from following me, and has not performed my commandments." And Samuel said unto Saul, "I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel." King Saul was commanded to destroy all the Amalekites and all their substance, but Saul spared their king Agag and the rest of the sheep and cattle, which he and the people felt that they could use for themselves as well as use for sacrifices to God. Who could fault King Saul and the people in the way they applied the human reasoning? What's wrong with sparing the best animals for one's own use? And the purpose in sparing the king perhaps was that knowing the nature of war which no one could lose, the kings spare the opposing king in the hope that they will be spared if they lose the war. But later, his life by dying in battle. He later lost his life by dying in battle. All leaders and people must use that example to make sure that they follow God's instructions in precise detail. Don't substitute your own judgment for it. My judgment is based entirely on Ezekiel 9 verses 5 to 7. God even further gave instructions to me regarding judging people who have committed atrocities. God sent an angel to give me the message that the Baniyas in India are to be destroyed. I had to look the characteristics of the Baniyas in Punjab, India, to understand how this judgment is to be applied. The Baniyas live among the Punjabis. They have used threats delivered electronically to force Sikhs to go against their will, whatever they wanted. They discriminated against Sikhs and worked assiduously to impoverish them. The additional factor is that they contaminated the food supply. This is complicated by the fact that many Baniyas have married Punjabi girls, some of them using threats. The message to destroy the Baniyas was delivered to me, I believe, in 2005. So I have had about 18 years to think about how this judgment is to be applied. After much thought and prayer, I have reached the conclusion that all Baniya males are to be put to death. Only the female children born to Baniyas through Punjabi mothers are to be spread out. Any female and male children born to Baniyas through other members are to be destroyed. I want to emphasize that these judgments are not lightly made. I know that if I make decisions willfully, like King Saul did, substituting my own judgment in place of God's clear instructions, God will stop working through me. I'll be physically in the coming catastrophe. I'll die physically in the coming catastrophes and most probably lose my eternal life as well. I pray in earnest when I ask God for more guidance on how to implement these judgments, with the intention of obeying without compromise in how God guides me. So besides these two guidelines, I have not received any other instructions. So how are these judgments to be applied in various situations? I will discuss that in part 4 video in this series. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest video.